It takes a bold man to make bold decisions. It takes a bolder man, and it takes a man with fucking bigger balls to stand by that decision because you have a long-term vision of what that decision was going to look like. That takes balls, and that when there's people hurling abuse at you, telling you that you're wrong, and telling you that you should get rid of him, or they should change your decision, standing in the face of all that abuse technically, and saying no, I'm sticking by this decision. I'm going to live and die by my sword, and I'm going to stick by this decision because I have a vision and I have a plan and I have a future in which this decision is going to pan out. That takes balls. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 2 Foot Attack podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos. We're back again for another week of me chatting absolute rubbish about football, and people watch some for some reason, and I'm glad you all do. But it's been an interesting week to say the least. You can tell by the title and the thumbnail exactly what we're going to be speaking about for the majority of the episode. So if you're not a Chelsea supporter, actually, stick around even if you're not, but I'm probably going to be speaking about it from a little bit more of a Chelsea supporter lens because, we'll get into it. But yes, of course, everyone knows the main topic of this, but also another manager got sacked, and we'll speak about him as well a little bit later on. And then apart from that, we're just going to be doing some general just chit chat, if we get the time. That is, if I don't speak about Graham Potter and potential replacements for more than an hour. But it was at least I got something to talk about. I was kind of going through, trying to figure out a run sheet for this episode yesterday, and I was like, gee, not a lot to speak about. And then like last night it was that obviously the Leicester manager got sacked, Brenden Rodgers, and then I wake up this morning and I find the news of Graham Potter being relieved of his duties, and hence why I'm wearing this top. I feel like I had to wear a Chelsea top for this episode. Really allow myself to be invested and fully immersed in this. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be speaking about this for quite a while. But I hope everyone's well before we properly get into it. I hope everyone's well. I hope everyone had a good week. I hope your teams won on the weekend. My team didn't, which probably led to the manager getting sacked. But there you go. And make sure you before we start, make sure you subscribe to the 2 Foot Attack podcast on YouTube. 12 subs away from 400. So I know I was on that last week. I'm on that the week before, but let's really try and make a push. It would mean the world. If we could just share it around, and it would. Yeah, no, it's a very, very much a vanity metric and very much something that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But it would be nice, and it's a good, nice whole number. So before the 28th of April, that would mean the world. Of course, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, 2 Foot Attack podcast. That's where you'll find it. And me as well, at Ari_Y_Stama on Twitter, Ari Stamatakos on Instagram. And I don't have a personal TikTok because I actually don't like that app. So I've managed to stay away from it as long as possible. But there you go. And all the audio platforms as well: Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. There you go. Those 4. All right, let's crack in. So as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, Graham Potter's been sacked. Now, let's kick things off by reading the statement that the Chelsea Football Club released. Chelsea FC have announced that Graham Potter has departed the club. Graham has agreed to collaborate with the club to facilitate a smooth transition. In his time with the club, Graham has taken us to the quarterfinal of the Champions League, where we will face Real Madrid. Chelsea would like to thank Graham for his efforts and contributions and wish him well for the future. Bruno Salvatore, maybe will take charge of the team as interim head coach, and we'll read the statement by Bowley and Co. On behalf of everyone at the club, we want to thank Graham Potter sincerely for his contributions to Chelsea. We have the highest degree of respect for Graham as a coach and as a person. He has always conducted himself with professionalism and integrity, and we are all disappointed in this outcome. Along with our incredible fan base, we will all be getting behind Bruno and the team as we focus on the rest of the season. We have 10 Premier League games left. 10 Premier League games remaining. Jesus Christ. Then we have a Champions League quarterfinal ahead. We will put every effort and commitment into every one of those games so we can end the season on a high. And then there's a report on the women's team winning 3-0. And at least they have their shit together. At least the girls have their shit together, and while the men just suck. But yes, Graham Potter relieved of his duties. Assistant coach Bruno Salvatore will take over for the rest of the season, you'd assume, in a similar mold to how The Spurs assistant will take over from Antonio Conte. So we're going to be a lot of managers being sacked. 11 managers sacked so far this season, and 11 managers sacked. De Zerbi from Brighton is now the 11th longest serving manager in the Premier League, and he was appointed in September, which says a lot about the current state of football. I feel, and it says a lot about the current state of the Premier League in particular. But yeah, Potter relieved of his duties after about September would have been the time ish where he was hired. So would have been 6 months. Yeah, 6 months until he's been given 6 months and he's been given the tic tac. And should we take a look at his let's take a look at his kind of time at Chelsea as we bring the fixtures up. We'll go by them one by one, and we'll take a look at his time at Chelsea before we dissect it. I feel like a little bit. So his first game, if I'm not mistaken, was against Salzburg in the Champions League. It was a 1-1 draw. Then they 2-1 win against Palace, 3-0 over Milan, 3-0 over Wolves, 2-0 over Milan, and 2-0 over Aston Villa. Good start so far. 0-0 over Brentford, 1-1 at home to United, which was a 90th minute goal from Casemiro, may I add. A 2-1 to Salzburg, 2-1 win to Salzburg, a 4-1 loss to Brighton, a 2-1 loss to Zagreb, Arsenal, City, Newcastle, back-to-back losses, Villa lost in a friendly during the World Cup, Bournemouth 2-0 win, Forest a 1-1 draw, then a loss to City twice in a row, and to Fulham, a 1-0 win over Palace, 0-0, 0-0 over Fulham and Liverpool, 1-0 draw over West Ham, 1-0 loss at Dortmund, 1-0 loss at home to Southampton, 2-0 loss to Spurs, then a 1-0 win at Leeds, 2-0 overcoming the 1-0 deficit, 2-0 win at Dortmund, going through 2-1 on aggregate, overcoming the 1-0 deficit away from home, 3-1 win against Leicester, 2-2 against Everton, which was disappointing, and a 2-0 loss to Aston Villa at home, which sealed his fate. Where do we go from here? Where do we start? So, I mean, this has been a roller coaster of a season, really. I didn't. I probably should have. I'll probably go back and watch. If you want to like a little bit of maybe a little interesting kind of juxtaposition of my feelings, maybe if you want to call it that. But I feel like it would be interesting to go back and look at or listen to the podcast in which Thomas Tuchel got sacked. That I would have done obviously the week that happened, and I feel like that would have been quite interesting to listen to, considering it feels like 6 years ago. By the way, it actually feels like a decade ago when Tuchel got sacked. That game against Spurs happened this year at the Bridge with that handshake post-match, which is insane. But I feel like it will be an interesting juxtaposition to go back and listen to that podcast, and listen to this one, and also listen to my thoughts on Potter, because the title of the first podcast after Graham Potter was appointed Chelsea coach of this podcast. First title of this podcast you know what I mean, was why Graham Potter will fail at Chelsea. Now, that was a title that was partly done for clickbait purposes. Obviously, I'm going to be transparent, and partly done for that reason, but also partly because I felt like it was a very, very risky appointment for both parties. Obviously, there's no doubting Graham Potter's ability as a head coach. I think if you are doubting his ability as a head coach and as a manager, you have rocks inside and you don't understand football, because we've seen what he's done at multiple clubs. Obviously, what he did in Sweden, taking Östersunds up and making the Europa League and doing well there, and of course what he did at Brighton as well was exceptional, considering the budget that he had and the squad turnover that he had at times. He was exceptional, right? And there's no doubt he's an exceptional coach. And if you are doubting that, then I don't know what to tell you, right? But it's right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time type thing, and you can't just have the best, like, if that makes sense. You can't just have, based on ability, the best kind of, like, this isn't FIFA, or it's not Football Manager, where you just look at attributes, and if every attribute is out of 100, you can't just put not 11 players that are all 99 rated into a team and they're going to win everything. Like, on FIFA that work, and on Football Manager that's probably going to work, but not in real life. And it's the same thing here, right? Graham Potter, despite him being a fantastic manager, and despite Graham Potter having all the skills to succeed at the high level, it just was the wrong place at the wrong time. If he had come in during an off season, say Tuchel got sacked at the end of last season, and then Potter came in prior to the commencement of this season, then we may be speaking about a different story. We probably are speaking about Chelsea, maybe not in a title race, but definitely cemented into top four and probably at least in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, maybe challenging for an FA Cup as well. That's where we'd be speaking about Chelsea. But unfortunately, he's a manager that requires time. As I've mentioned countless times before in this podcast, he's a manager that requires time, and he's a manager that requires patience, and that requires the board to have full confidence in him in order for him to fully express his ideas and for him to fully express himself as a manager. Now it's a very interesting kind of situation that Chelsea found themselves in at least with Potter, because there's 10 matches to go. There's no jeopardy in the Premier League season for Chelsea anymore. Is there really a jeopardy in the Champions League? Not really. Chelsea versus the reigning champions of the Champions League. So even if Chelsea got knocked out, you can't really point and say he failed, if that makes sense. So really, there was no jeopardy for the back end of the season. It was really a kind of free hit for Graham Potter in the back end of the season, and yet he still got sacked, which is quite interesting because, like I said, and it's obviously quite obvious, Graham Potter needed time and he needed patience, and he probably needed an off-season and a pre-season where there's no pressure on him. He's not having a game every 5 days and travelling to Europe and then travelling all around the country where he can just sit with his squad for 2-3 months and train his system and his way. He hasn't had the luxury to do that. Remember, most of his tenure at Chelsea has come post-World Cup, which has been Monday, Wednesday, or Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday for the most part, right? Whether that be in the League, in the Cup, or in Europe. So I think you need to look at it of one of two ways. If you believe Graham Potter has no ability to change Chelsea and has no ability to coach better than what he is currently coaching, then of course you get rid of him, right? There's no point wasting time. Let's get rid of him, right? That's obviously that's not the opinion that I hold. I hold the opinion that with time and with patience and with a proper transfer window and a proper pre-season, he would have done well as a Chelsea boss. However, I was in the camp of to keep him until for the exact reasons that I proposed, because I do have faith in him as a coach, and I think with an off season and with a pre-season, it would do him a world of good. However, I also understand the point of started really well. What was it? 10 games unbeaten and 6 wins on the trot to start his campaign. It wasn't great football, but it was results. And when you're a manager making that step up, you just need results to get yourself comfortable, to get the confidence going, to get that little bit of luck, a little bit of fortune going. So it was like, all right, he got the results, and it was a good start. Then it plateaued a little bit pre-World Cup. Maybe the World Cup kind of maybe distracted him a little bit, kind of thinking about what he would do during that break in terms of like trying to get his squad ready and what tactics, etc. Post-World Cup, poor, and it hasn't really improved since. It improved a little bit over the last month. That win to Leicester, the win against Leeds, obviously going through in the Champions League as well. So it's improved a little bit in the last month, but obviously the results haven't been good enough. Chelsea sit 11th or 12th, fall out of the top 10 of the Premier League. European competition is all but out of the question. Very, very similar to the 2015 season under Mourinho, or under Mourinho and then Gus. So yeah, it's an interesting development. I think it's a good talk. It's a good kind of. We're gonna look back at this season of Chelsea. We're gonna look back at this season, looking at Chelsea, looking back at this season, if that makes sense. And it's gonna be a real sliding doors moment, I think, because you sack Tuchel, okay. Probably not the best call. Didn't have the best starts to the season. Was crippled and burdened with a lot of players which I don't think he wanted. I don't think he wanted Aubameyang. I don't think he wanted Koulibaly, like these type of players. And he gets sacked just over 12 months removed from winning the Champions League. Okay. Then you bring in Graham Potter, a manager who quite clearly is a project manager, and quite clearly needs 12, 18, potentially even 24 months to get his side ticking. And I said this with Conte. I said this when I spoke about Conte, and I've said this when I spoke about United when they got rid of or when they hired Ten Hag, and I spoke about this every single time a manager is sacked. The football is always happening. There's always next year, right? You're not gonna get relegated. Chelsea aren't gonna get relegated this season, right? There's no jeopardy involved. Chelsea aren't gonna disband. Chelsea aren't gonna disappear. All of the players aren't gonna magically leave. We're not gonna all of a sudden become a League 2 team. There is always football next year, right? Meaning, why are we so hung up about the short term constantly? Why is it always, how do we win this season? I want to win this season. We've seen countless times before. I mean, Jurgen Klopp is a fantastic example. You sacrifice the short term 2, maybe 3 years at a push for a 5, 6, 7 year reign of not dominance, but a reign at the top of the table, right? And Klopp, of course, has been extremely unlucky with Pep. Under any normal circumstances, Jurgen Klopp will be what should be. I mean, I still think he is, but under any normal circumstances, Jurgen Klopp should be one of the most decorated managers in Premier League history. It's just, he's been fucking stiffed, right? So, that is because Liverpool had a project of short-term pain, long-term success. And what you have with that is that now Liverpool have a proper culture. Now Liverpool have a proper identity. They have a ideology of what they are, what their game style is, what they stand for, what are their kind of commandments in a sense. And that is because you allow a manager to stay there and build a culture. That's going to allow them to, even when they're underperforming, like this season, Liverpool are underperforming, right? But they're still challenging for top 4. They're still there and thereabouts. That season where they were crippled by injuries, still finished in the top 4. That's because they had a good culture and they knew what they stood for, and they had commandments that they followed because of the culture that was allowed to be kind of integrated in that club by a long-serving coach. When you have short-term managers, 18-month managers, 24-month managers max, you can't. What's your culture? Your culture is sacking managers, and that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable because how many managers are there? What manager right now is going to come into Chelsea and change everything? If you're looking for a short-term solution, I'll touch on that in a sec, but there's not many, right? So I point my blame and I point the finger to Todd Bowley because it takes a bold man to make bold decisions. It takes a bolder man, and it takes a man with fucking bigger balls to stand by that decision because you have a long-term vision of what that decision was going to look like. That takes balls, and that when there's people hurling abuse at you, telling you that you're wrong, and telling you that you should get rid of him, or they should change your decision, standing in the face of all that abuse technically, and saying, no, I'm sticking by this decision. I'm going to live and die by my sword, and I'm going to stick by this decision because I have a vision and I have a plan and I have a future in which this decision is going to pan out. That takes balls, and that is what a leader should be. It's not being stubborn, because being stubborn would kind of insinuate that there is no potential in which that decision could work out. There is a clear potential future in which Graham Potter is one of Chelsea's most successful managers, right? There's because of how good of a manager he is, which we've already spoken about, and with the abundance of resources that Chelsea have, there is a quite clear potential future in which Graham Potter succeeds. And it takes a leader, it takes a strong man or a strong person in a position of power to back that decision, to make it and to stand by it and to live and die by a sword. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, if it doesn't pan out after you've given it its due diligence in a sense of giving it time, then to hold your hands up and say, I got it wrong. That takes a leader. That takes a man, right? That takes a proper person with proper leadership qualities, and a person who can handle being in a position of power. What he did was he cowered. Todd Bowley cowered from his decision because of external pressures, and he took the easy road. He took the cowardice way out because everything about Graham Potter was Todd Bowley. He appointed him, gave him all the signings, gave him the backing, gave him everything, and then as soon as it got a little bit tough, as soon as the fans really started to put the pressure on, he folded. That, to me, doesn't scream leadership. That is not a man that I want running a football club. Not because he's not a good businessman, not because he's not obviously stupidly rich, which helps, and not because he's any of the other stuff, but because he's in a position of power. He's in a position of power, and he is cowarding and reversing his decision when he's said so much for about 6 months, and then 1 week he just goes, sorry, I'm changing. That doesn't scream leadership to me. That is not a leader. And that is probably where my fury anger and disappointment kind of lies more than anything. Because you can have your opinions on Graham Potter all you want, right? You can think he's a good coach, you can think he's a bad coach, you can think he was right for Chelsea, wrong for Chelsea, whatever, right? And you can have your opinions on Todd Bowley based on the decision that he made. You can think he's an idiot because he's keeping him on. You can think that he's an idiot because he sacked him. What you can't not say, and what Todd Bowley needed to put across to the fans transparently, like properly put it across to them in a way that is easy to understand and that is very transparent, is I understand where we are right now, but what I see for the football club is in XYZ years, months, days, weeks, wherever, we're going to be in XYZ position. Because I have the faith in Graham Potter, I will give him the backing in terms of resources, time, morale, everything. And that, at least the fans, well, intelligent fans at least, would look at that and think, okay, I don't agree with it, but I back my club in. I back the vision in, and we'll see where it goes. But Todd Bowley's just hidden away. He just hidden away, said, just let it leak through the press, let David Ornstein do all his dirty work for him, let Fabrizio do all his dirty work, and just be like, yeah, we back him, and then just sack him. That's where the frustration lies, for me anyway. I didn't get a chance to, I didn't watch the game against Villa. I was exhausted, so it was 2 a.m. kickoff. Australia time. I didn't get a chance to watch it because I was exhausted. I went back and watched the mini match and stuff, so I saw it. And his post-game comments angered a lot of people, saying that, obviously his post-game comments saying that it was a positive performance and that we played well and etc. The stats and all this stuff, right? People need to understand football is subjective. People need to understand that football is subjective, right? There is no objectively right or wrong way to look at a football game, to analyse a football game, to judge a footballer, to judge a football coach, to judge anything. There's no objective right or wrong way. And Graham Potter is obviously one of the more intelligent men when it comes to football on the planet, right? He's probably in the 99% of most intelligent men when it comes to football, right? So people questioning him, because it's not like he fell into the job. Frank Lampard fell into the job, right? Frank Lampard fell into the Chelsea job, right? He is a perfect example, and I love him. I love Frank Lampard, right? I love him, right? I love him as a footballer. I loved him as a manager, right? And I was very disappointed to see him go, right? But he was a manager that fell into the Chelsea job. Avram Grant was a manager that fell into the Chelsea job. He didn't earn it. He fell into it. You cannot say that Graham Potter did not at least show that he has some form of very, very astute football managing ability. Very astute. Look at what he did to Brighton, right? And look at where they are now because of him. You can't tell me that he doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't tell me that he's not a good football coach. I refuse to live in a world where someone's telling me that. It is obvious. It is obvious that Graham Potter is a good football coach. And it's obvious that he will go to another club and succeed. It's blatantly obvious to anyone who has two eyes and a brain, right? Was it the wrong place at the wrong time? Probably. Is Graham Potter a terrible coach because he failed at Chelsea when the club's going through a ridiculous period of upheaval, both externally and internally? No, it doesn't make him a shit coach. It just means that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like I said, if Graham Potter had come in at the start of this season, so if Tuchel had got sacked at the end of last season and Potter had a full pre-season and had a full proper transfer window with this squad, Chelsea would not be in the position that they're in and would probably be cementing in the top four and probably challenging like they are for the European Cup and maybe even the FA Cup, like I said. You cannot question his ability as a football coach. I was in, like I said, I was in the bracket, and I was in the camp of giving more time for the reasons that I mentioned before about allowing him to build a culture. However, I can understand why I can understand why people are wanting him out because the results aren't good enough. But a lot of people don't understand the other point of view, which is once again why I think fans. I mean, I haven't really brought this up at any stage. I don't think I've spoken about this, but fans have a lot of influence on the club, right? A lot of influence on the club. Probably more than a lot realise, right? Especially when it comes to on-field decisions. The reception that obviously Graham Potter and the players were getting at Stamford Bridge, from what I saw, wasn't great, and that obviously had a direct impact. But you need to, as fans of your football club, you need to back your club. Because if you don't back your club, what's the point? What's the point? If I don't agree with anything the Chelsea Football Club do, what's the point in me supporting them? What's the point? I have to, it's a give and take. They give me a football club to support. They give me all these great memories. I give them my backing. It's a give and trade. It is a give and take, sorry. It is a give and take. The entitled nature of some fans of some Chelsea fans, assuming that they know everything, and whatever they want, they should get. Which I agree to some extent because the fans are the number one stakeholder. I understand that. But you need to back the club in. And I don't think that's happened from a lot of the fan base, which is disappointing. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think Todd Bowley has backed in his decision either. I don't think he has fully bought into the project that he designed and that he implemented. Which, if you do something, do it fully. Don't half-ass it, right? There's no point in doing something if you're going to half-ass it. And I feel like Todd Bowley has kind of put half his foot in the pool, or put half his foot in the Graham Potter pool, instead of going head deep. And that's what you need to do as a leader. That's what you need to do. You can't be 50-50 about things, especially when it's such a massive thing as the manager of your football club. It's not exactly we're not talking about the physio or the chef or the marketing staff. We're talking about the head coach. When you are in a position of power, you need to be fully in or fully out. You need to be in a camp of this. Well, not only that, you don't only need to be fully in or fully out. You need to have a plan, a clear vision that has a relatively objective start and a relatively objective end, and that is what you follow. I can guarantee you, Todd Bowley 4 months ago didn't look at this Aston Villa game and think, "Oh, if Chelsea lose to Aston Villa, I'm going to sack Graham Potter." He didn't do that, right? That doesn't exist. He probably thought, regardless of what's going to happen, I'm going to give him to the end of the season, at least. To give him a pre-season, give him an off-season, give him a transfer window to get this team right. But he cowered, which is what I outlined before. Yeah, it's just one of those things, right, where you can't really I mean, I don't know. I don't even know, to be honest, anymore. I'm speaking about this more from a fan perspective because it was quite disappointing. Quite disappointing. About like it was just I don't know. It's just annoying for the most part. The fact that it's annoying for the most part that this has kind of happened because of such an avoidable situation. It was avoidable by not sacking Thomas Tuchel. That's how it was avoidable. Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's a wait and see type operation. Do Chelsea win the Champions League? Chelsea have previous for sacking their manager and then going on to win the Champions League that season. It would be quite funny though, wouldn't it? It would be quite funny. It's not the only time that it's happened, or it's not the only time that like we don't have 100% success rate in terms of sacking managers and going on to win the Champions League. Of course, it happened in 2012 with I think AVB got sacked and Demeter got brought in, and then of course Lampard getting the tic tac, and Tuchel coming in and doing the job. But anyway, part of gone. I'm disappointed, but I can understand why a lot of people want it, and I can understand the rationale as to why could be a good decision for the club. However, I hope it doesn't come back to bite Chelsea. Put it that way. I hope it doesn't come back to bite Chelsea. Okay, let's move on, and let's move on to potential what are we talking about? Coaches, new coaches. So Betfair, I've just typed up Chelsea coaching candidates. There's quite a few names on the list that quite a few names on the list. So we'll rattle through them. This is the Chelsea next manager odds provided by Betfair. So you've got from top to bottom, in terms of from the least amount of odds to most. Nagelsmann, Poch, Zidane, Pep. That's the top four. That's a pretty big top four. Oliver Glasner, Ruben Amorim. I don't know who those two are. I'll double check those while I stall for time. Luis Enrique, Diego Simeone, Brenden Rodgers, Thomas Frank, Jose Mourinho, Marcelo Bielsa, John Terry, Carlo Ancelotti, and Jesse Marsch. That is there's quite a few names, and there's one name absent of that list that one name absent of that list that I will bring up a little bit later on. And yes, it may be biased. Yes, it may be. And those who know me definitely know what I'm about to speak about. But that manager may be a little bit biased. But anyway, Oliver Glasner is the current coach of Eintracht Frankfurt, who currently sits 6th in the Bundesliga. So of course he's in a pretty good run of form, doing well for his side. Of course, Chelsea and Eintracht Frankfurt do have previous. We'll remember that Europa League tie. Kepa doing the one good thing he's ever done in a Chelsea shirt. And then Ruben Amorim is the current manager of Sporting Club, who, if I'm not mistaken, sit top of the Portuguese league. They sit 4th, actually. It's Benfica that is top. I get them confused. My mistake. But they sit 4th. Of course, they have already had one of their managers leave. Pretty sure that De Zerbi was the manager of Sporting. But anyway. So yeah, they're quite a few names. Here. Of course, there's probably others that are on different betting sites. Of course, gamble responsibly. But yeah, if we're just going to rattle through them, I think if we're working from bottom to top, so if we're doing the other way around, Jesse Marsch, no, not cut out. I like him, and I haven't spoken about this because I haven't spoken about this on the podcast because despite my Jesse Marsch fandom, I think it's stupid that he got sacked from Leeds. But anyway, Carlo, wouldn't mind it. Would not mind that, actually. Wouldn't mind it. Terry, no. Bielsa, I love him, but no. Jose, no. Thomas Frank, I don't mind. Once again, though, it's very similar to Graham Potter. So if you're gonna hire Thomas Frank and give him 6 months, don't. Rodgers, no. Simeone, no. If fans were angry about the slightly subdued and boring football that Thomas Tuchel was playing at times, geez, they would be frustrated as all hell with Diego Simeone. Luis Enrique, I don't mind. I don't mind. I think, yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind that one. He's one of the ones on this list in which I would potentially like. Amorim and Glasner, no, don't know enough about them, and I don't know enough about them to make a full judgment on them. But considering Frankfurt are sixth and Sporting aren't even top of the Portuguese league, I don't know. But I don't know their credentials as managers. Those who are more informed will probably have to tell you more than me. And Pep, no chance that happens. Zidane, don't think that will happen. Poch, get no chance, get fucked. And Nagelsmann is of course the number one, the favourite. Now, Nagelsmann. Let's speak about Nagelsmann for a little bit, and then I want to speak about another person. Nagelsmann, of course, is probably the favourite, and will probably get it. He'll probably get it, unless he decides to go to Spurs, which I'd be shocked. It's one of those things where, on the surface of it, Julian Nagelsmann looks great. Plays expensive football. Is well regarded. Was coach of Bayern. Has obviously got a fantastic CV. If we look at let's just look at his Wikipedia page. He was at Leipzig for 2 years, and he moved to Bayern. As manager, he won the Bundesliga last year, and would probably have gone on to win the Bundesliga should he have stayed on, and won the Super Cup 2 years in a row. Won the coach of the season in the won the coach of the season in the Bundesliga for 2016-17. That was when he was coach of Hoffenheim. Was German football manager of the year in 2017, and was UEFA men's coach of the year, or was third place in UEFA's men's coach of the year in 2019. 2020. So he's obviously quite a credentialed manager, obviously, and we all know how good he is, right? However, he fell out at Bayern, and obviously the nature in which the Chelsea board operate still, despite it being a different board, it's still the same, quite clearly. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's the guy. Based off what I've read, based off what I've heard and listened to, tactically, great. As a manager, good. More than capable of doing the Chelsea job. Everything else about it, he's got 12-18 months max. Or 12-18 months max before he kicks off for no reason and gets a sack. So I don't want to deal with that. As Chelsea card, I don't want a manager that's going to happen. I just want a stable coach. Is that too much to ask? I just want a coach to just come in and just do his job. Don't make any fuss. Just do his job. I'll tell you who that coach was. Graham Potter. That's who that coach was. Apologies for the ASMR, but I want to really emphasise the point. That was Graham Potter's job. That was what he was meant to do. He was the perfect manager to just no fuss, no kicking up a storm in the media or to the board. He just goes in and does his job, because Chelsea haven't had a manager that has done their job in about 10 years. Right? Let's rifle through. Let's rifle through the Chelsea managers in the last decade. So we're talking 2013. So it would have been just after Carlo. It would have been just after Rafa. So yeah, that's it. Hire Liverpool icon Rafa Benitez for Chelsea as a Chelsea manager. No worries. That obviously wasn't going to work. Jose did his job. Jose won the league, but then also fell out of love with the board and obviously lost the dressing room. So he didn't do his job. He kicked up a shitstorm. Gone. Conte won the league, but then also the same thing happened. Gone. Sarri won the Europa League, but the same thing happened. Lost the dressing room. Gone. Lampard couldn't coach. I love him, but he couldn't coach. Gone. Tuchel lost faith with the board. Gone. Potter. What was Potter doing? Like I said, Lampard couldn't coach because Lampard had 18 months of it. He had 18 months of it, right? I don't agree he should have got sacked either, in that respect, but he had 18 months of it. Potter's had 6. And also, Lampard had COVID football as well, let's not forget. But, Potter's had 6. I don't get it. Anyways. So, Yeah, a manager. Let's think about this. A manager that will come in, be humble, be respectful, but confident. Let's try and pinpoint the manager I'm speaking about. A manager that's confident, humble, done the hard yards in some very tough leagues, experienced a lot of different footballing cultures, has the experience of taking a big step up, in kind of football club status and doing really well. Has connections to most places around the world, has the ability to find hidden gems for cheap money in order to turn a ridiculous profit, which just helps the future of the football club. Plays an attractive brand of football that is very, very easy to watch and is fan friendly. Has won plenty of trophies in his time, and is someone that will not, and that's someone who doesn't have an ego enough to demand to demand the Chelsea board move heaven and earth to get what he wants, and has an ego that is manageable and won't kick up a shitstorm if something doesn't go wrong or something doesn't go right. I've just listed 10 points there, and my mind goes to this man, and I'm just going to bring up. I don't want to say his name. I just want to bring up a song. I just want to bring up a song that has done that. One of my favourite songs personally. If we're going to bring this up, no, YouTube decides to play an ad before. So I think this man is the ideal person. I would say ideal, but one of the Chelsea, or one of the potential candidates for the Chelsea job that I would love more than anyone else. Wait for it. Ange Postecoglou, I want your hot love and emotion endlessly. Here we go. We can't get over you. Ange Postecoglou, I want your hot love and emotion endlessly. Yeah. So, Ange, give me Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, I'm 60% joking. I'm 60% joking. However, genuinely, there's a couple of pros and a couple of cons to Ange, and I want the fan base. I want people listening to realise any time there's a job vacancy in the Premier League, I will speak about Ange Postecoglou as a potential coach until he gets it, because I feel obliged to, as a man who loves him with all my heart. A couple of pros, a couple of cons, and I'm going to speak about Leicester as well. And I know I do realize I've spoken about Chelsea for 42 minutes, but I'll wrap this up quickly. A couple of pros, a couple of cons for Postecoglou being Chelsea boss. Cons: it's a ridiculous step up in coaching, right? In level and in reputation and in stature, etc. The fans will be on his back from day one, though he'll be given no patience at all. So he needs to get it right straight away. And the egos. He hasn't had the experience in managing a dressing room with the amount of egos that Chelsea have. So they're cons. Big cons. Big cons. And also, is it too early for him? Probably. It is probably a little bit too early for him. However, pros. And those like 10 points that I made before I was being facetious, but genuinely as well. He's an extremely confident person. At least that's what he comes across as, an extremely confident person that backs his abilities, right? Which is important. He has experience at taking risks. Like I mentioned last week with when I was speaking about him for the Spurs job, he is a man that takes risks and that has experience in taking risks, and for the most part it's worked out for him, right? So he knows what to do in that respect. He is humble enough to improve on himself, and he's humble enough to address issues in which he can improve, and thus making him a better coach. And also, it's actually, this is probably more of a con, or it can fit into pros and cons. This point kind of overarches both of them, is that he's a manager that will probably give Chelsea short-term gain, but also is a very, very good long-term project for Chelsea. So the short-term gain possibility probably sits at about 35-40%. The long-term gain possibility probably sits at something like 75-80%, in my view. which goes back to what do Chelsea want next? Do Chelsea want a win now type manager? If so, probably go out and get Ancelotti. Probably try poach Zidane. Probably try get Nagelsmann. Or do you want a 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, we're challenging for the Champions League with this manager style coach? Go for Ange. Go for Thomas Frank. Hell, go for De Zerbi, right? I doubt Brighton are going to be willing to do that again. But it's about what they want, right? It's about what they kind of want as a coach. And if they want a project coach, that kind of concedes Chelsea to being a non-title contender for about 3 years, in the hopes of the next 10 after that being sustained good football and a good level where they will challenge for leagues and Champions League and FA Cups, etc. I think Ange is the guy. Or Thomas Frank if you want to be safer, or De Zerbi if you want to be safer than that. But there you go. I probably could have loaded up that song and played it through my headphones and not had to get it up on my phone. But yeah, there you go. I hope that didn't blow anyone's eardrums off. It didn't. It sounded fine in my headphones, and I can hear all the audio that comes, all the audio feedback through the mics. So it should be fine. Anyways, let's move on. 45 minutes, and I've spoken about Chelsea for 40 of them. Let's speak on Leicester quickly. Obviously, Rodgers sacked. So this is a very morbid episode in terms of I'm speaking about people losing their jobs. Like we did with Chelsea, let's read the statement. Let's read the statement that Leicester have put out. Is it going to be longer or shorter? Take your bets right now. Over or under. Chelsea's one. Leicester City Football Club has reached a mutual agreement with Brenden Rodgers that will see him leave the club after 4 years as men's first team manager. Mutual agreement. He got sacked. Also known as. Brenden departs King Power Stadium as one of the most successful managers in the club's history. Not hard. Having guided us to a long-awaited first FA Cup triumph in 2021, the FA Community Shield in the same year, 2 of the 3 clubs' highest Premier League finishes in consecutive European campaigns, including our first European semi-final in 2022. Assistant coach Greg Davis and first-team fitness coach Glenn Driscoll will also be leaving the club. Will also be leaving with the club's thanks and best wishes for their future careers. This is worded really weirdly. Immediate responsibility for the first team, for men's first team training and match preparation will be led by club long-serving first team coaches Adam Sadler and Mike Stonewell. And there's a long statement which I can't bother to read. So there you go. Rodgers gone. The Spurs are in Leicester are in a far different position to Chelsea, in which they have jeopardy. And also Leicester and also Rodgers have been there for quite a while. So I can kind of understand why. Can kind of understand why they feel like the time is now. They sit in 19th place. They're 1 point off safety. But if they win their next game, they could potentially jump as high as 13th. So yeah, geez, that's a very tight relegation battle. Jesus Christ. Yeah, they've not won since February. Where they beat Spurs 4-1, which is quite funny. And yeah. It's I think it was fair enough. I think it was fair enough purely off the basis that this new manager bounce should keep them up. Like the new manager bounce should keep them up. And then I feel like regardless of whether or not they stayed up, regardless of whether or not he stayed on and they stayed up, I feel like he was going to go at the end of the season anyway, and I feel like it was right for him to go at the end of the season anyway, in order to just kind of let him go, let him do what he wants to do, and we'll start fresh as a new era for the football club. Because it seems like for the past 5 years, it's been Rodgers. Rodgers as a Leicester has been kind of, we all know what it is. It's been one identity. It's Ndidi, Maddison, Tielemans, Vardy. Obviously then it was Soyuncu. And then it was Fofana, and then it was Johnny Evans and Kasper Schmeichel and Iheanacho and Albrighton and Perez and all these guys, right? Some of them have obviously left the club, some of them are still there. But when you think of Leicester in the last 5 years, it's very the same every season. So I feel like a fresh start. New team or new manager, fresh start. Maybe getting rid of some older players or some players that have been there for quite a while, getting a brand new culture into the team and getting a brand new proper team, like getting a new team and getting a new identity and becoming a new club almost, is going to be important for them because it feels like they've just been stale for the past 2 years and it hasn't really suited them that well. Although their team is quite good and I think Brenden Rodgers is a pretty good manager, it just hasn't worked for them. They've obviously gone out and signed obviously Harry Stamatakos and Tete as well, some big signings for them in their hopes to stay up. I do think they will stay up. They're too good to go down in my opinion, like properly too good to go down. Same with West Ham. I think they'll both stay up. But I just feel like it was the right time for him to go. It was the right time for him to go. I think it was the right time for him to go at the end of the season. But in order to guarantee their safety, getting rid of him now, getting the new manager bounce in, they'll keep him up. They'll be fine. It won't be that big of a deal because he was going to go anyway, in my opinion. So, sad to see Rodgers go because I actually quite like him as a person. I quite like him as a coach. And he's, of course, a person that could potentially benefit as well. Because I feel like despite where he's been, his reputation has definitely increased because what he did with Leicester, his reputation definitely increased. So I don't know whether or not he goes to another Premier League club. I don't know whether or not he goes overseas. I don't know, or he goes to international management. I don't know either. But I expect to see him at another club, at another big-ish club in the near future because I actually do rate him quite highly as a coach. I feel like it ran his course. It got stale. It got dry. And it was the right time for him to move on, in my opinion. So, there you go. As my eye gets really itchy for some reason. That's all right, we're fine. Potential replacements. I spoke about Ange Postecoglou for Chelsea. This would actually make sense, providing that they stay up. I'm not talking right now. I mean next season. Providing that Leicester stay up, I actually think it could be quite a good fit, genuinely a good fit. I feel like it'd be a good step up for him. I feel like it would be a good step up for... I feel like it would be a good step up for him. I feel like it's a natural progression. I spoke about last week Postecoglou potentially going to Spurs, and I was half joking, half being serious, but in my heart of hearts, I don't think that should happen. I think it's too risky of a job for him to do. However, Leicester, on the basis that they do stay up and they're in the Premier League next season, I genuinely think that's a job for him. I think it's a job for him. It seems like a natural progression going up, moving to like a mid to lower tier Premier League side with the potential and the capability to push them into that top 9, top 8 area. Leicester have traditionally played good football, especially over the recent years. The players at his disposal, should he keep most of them, are used to playing a more expansive, attacking brand of football that relies a lot on possession and instinct and these characteristics that Postecoglou has shown in spades for Celtic. I actually genuinely think, I know I spoke about Spurs last week and I spoke about Chelsea as well in this episode, I genuinely think, should they stay up, Postecoglou to Leicester makes a lot of sense. I think it genuinely does. And it would be good to see. It actually would be good to see, and it's something that I genuinely think could happen. I think I saw somewhere that he may be the second favourite at the time of recording. So hopefully that gets over the line on the basis that they do stay up. I don't think he should go. I don't think he should go right now. It's too risky for him to go right now. I think next season, should they stay up, would be a good job for him. But anyway, let's finish things up. As I ramble for too long about Chelsea and I leave myself with not a lot of time to spare, I haven't got anything else on my run sheet, so let's just go through some other results and some talking points that I might be able to pick up. City beat Liverpool 4-1, which was surprising. The game was really weird. City, should they win their game in hand, will be 5 points off Arsenal. They can't, can they? Arsenal can't bottle it, can they? They can't. No chance. They've got it. They've got it wrapped up. That, of course, leaves Liverpool 8 points off top 4 with a game in hands on Tottenham, who are in 5th. But United and Newcastle are both on 50 points, 3rd and 4th. Have the same amount of games as Liverpool, who are on 42 points. I still think Liverpool will make top 4. It's 8 points in 10 games. I think they'll kick. I think they'll kick themselves into gear and not really drop that many points here on in. They got 11 games to go. I think they'll be fine. Moving on to some A-League chat. Victory won, which was good. They somehow they're not conceding the season. There's 5 games to go. 5 games to go. Victory are 3 points. Victory are 4 points off 6th with how many games I say? With 5 games to go. Could Victory make I think depending on the result of the resumed game on Wednesday, which this will go out before, but I don't know the result time of recording. Depending on the result of the derby that will be resumed on Wednesday, if Victory can get a point, they can seriously make a charge for the top 6, which is insane to think about considering how abysmal they've been for literally the whole season. Like, there were talks that Popper should be sacked. I said on this podcast that I think he should go at the end of the season. I didn't envisage a world in which they could potentially make the top 6. But if Victory make finals from the position that they're in, I mean, it's not that much. It's not that big of a thing that could happen. Like, it's not that out of the realm of possibility. Like, there's literally every single club from 6th to 12th could make the top 6. That's how close this season is. So if Victory just hit a patch of form and win their remaining games, probably barring the derby, that's going to be insane. Like, that's going to be insane if they can somehow scrape top 6. It's going to be the most undeserved top 6 ever, and they'll probably get smacked in the finals, and probably deservedly so. But, it's a little bit of an indictment on the A-League, considering how bad that they've been, but still they're within a chance of winning the grand final. I don't know. It says something about the league, but also as a Victory supporter, it would be fucking cool, and it would be funny as well to see it happen, considering as well what's happened during the season with everything off field as well. So yeah, providing that they get if Victory get a point, cut it down to 3 points. Yeah, Jesus Christ, the season's still alive somehow. The season is still alive. Like, they verse Perth at home, which they should win. Western Sydney over there, which is tough. And then they end the game on 2 home games against Macarthur and Brisbane. They can't do it, can they? They can't do it. 4 games, 3 points. It would be something. It would be something. Anyways, I think that's enough. Actually, no. Let's rattle through more results. 3-3 Sydney Western United. That was a weird game as well. I caught some of that. That was bizarre. Sydney dominated, and I felt like Western United did what they did last season, in terms of being really scrappy and being like defensively solid and kind of holding on for dear life type thing, but whilst also conceding 3 goals and scoring 3. It was quite a weird game. I felt they were extremely efficient. Like, if we look at the stats. They had 11 shots. I mean, 11 shots for 3 goals is quite efficient. They had 8 on target, right? So maybe every time they went forward, they looked like they were going to score. So yeah, but it was a weird game. Central Coast beat Brisbane 4-1. If any team's going to win it, I want Central Coast to win it, just quietly as well. Of course, if Victory don't. And then yeah, City just scraped a point against Newcastle, which is good for Victory's top 6 chances. It was a Caputo, 17-year-old. He's younger than me, and he's scoring 92nd minute winners or 92nd minute equalisers in the A-League, which is insane. Yeah, so that's all the A-League chat out of the way, I'm pretty sure. If we look at more results over the weekend, yeah, that's about it. The Premier League was a bit boring. West Ham beat Southampton 1-0, which was needed for them. Southampton are all but down, pretty much. I don't see a way that they can sneak their way back. But granted, there's still 10 games left, and they're only 3 points. But I just don't think they're that good. So I think they're down. Newcastle beat United 2-0, which was interesting considering that United are meant to be good and Newcastle are meant to be on a form slump. It's quite interesting. Quite funny to see that. Brighton and Brentford 3-3 draw. McAllister's last minute penalty, which was quite quite an entertaining game. I didn't watch that game. I watched the Arsenal game. It was on Goal Rush, or the first 60 minutes of it before I fell asleep. Chelsea lost, which we covered. But I think that's enough for this episode. Napoli lost 4-0 to Milan, and I really hope I didn't jinx them. But the first time I properly speak about Napoli this podcast, they go on to lose their next game 4-0. So if they lose to Lecce on Saturday, I'm gonna feel so bad. But they can't bottle it. They're what, 11 points clear? No, fucking more than that. I can't do maths. They're 16 points clear. There is no way they're bottling from here. No chance in hell. If Napoli don't win the league, I'll stop doing this podcast. There you go. I'm not the Champions League. If Napoli don't win the Serie A title, I will stop doing this podcast and just I will remove myself from any sort of presence on any social media, even Instagram, Twitter, everything. Podcast gone, everything. They can't check it from you. Apart from that, nothing much else. Preview of the week. Liverpool Chelsea 5 a.m. on Wednesday, which is going to be interesting. The resumption of the derby, which is going to be interesting to see how that happens, considering the lineups as well. Like, does Nani have to play? Does Nani have to play with one leg? Does Dagestani have to fly back from Norway to step on the field and then get subbed off straight away? It's going to be interesting to see how that happens. Obviously City already 1-0 up in that game. And then more A-League games happening this weekend. A lot of midday kickoffs. Liverpool Arsenal, which is going to be a great game. And then we return once again. So yes, that is all. That is it for another episode of the Should Takeover podcast. As David Ornstein has just tweeted, work begins to install new Chelsea boss after Graham Potter's exit. No clear favourite. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Guess we'll have to wait and see how that develops. Maybe emergency podcast if it's an interesting development. If it's like Nagelsmann, then no. But if it's Postecoglou, you betcha I'm going to be here doing an emergency podcast, and it's going to be me just screaming for 40 minutes. Anyways, thank you very much for watching another episode. We're done for another week, just over an hour, and most of that was me talking about Chelsea, which is good fun as always. No, it's not. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for sticking around. If you have done, 12 more subscribers by the 20th of April would mean the world. It's, like I said, doesn't really mean a whole lot, but just nice to see the round number tick over. Make sure to subscribe, like the podcast, notification bell, all that good stuff. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, 2 Foot Tackle Podcast. All the audio platforms as well. Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. There you go. Thank you very much for sticking around. See you guys next week. Chat soon. Goodbye.